Hey, how you doing? This is Martone, owner and trainer of Fuller Fitness. I apologize if you hear my cat or my dog while doing this. My cat is in a mood for a boyfriend, and the dog barks at almost everything. Even though if I open the door to where he can actually see some of the people he's barking at, he wouldn't do it. So um, today's video is about squats, and not only squats, but using bands. For those who have them, those who use them, and with high hopes that depending on um, what kind of bands you have and what kind of exercises you are doing with them, or all out workouts that you're doing with them, that you do them correctly slash in ways that work for you. So again, first of all, depending on which video if not videos of mine that you have seen, especially if it's with bands, is that when you do any exercise, the more you stretch whichever band that you have and use, the more you're going to feel it. So I think I'm just under 5'9". So when I'm doing certain things, like with this band, it's not a good idea for me to do a shoulder press because the amount of stress that it feels, even though it's supposedly 30 pounds on its own, and then the more you stretch it, the heavier it's going to feel. And you're probably going to think that, oh, 30 pounds is easy, no problem, depending on what stage you're in terms of how heavy of a dumbbell you can chest press, row, curl, shoulder press, squat. But then all of a sudden you do certain things with a band, and all of a sudden it feels so different. That's a good thing in my opinion in terms of helping you with other things, depending on what and why you're doing certain things. So again, this band, depending on which band you use and where you get your bands from, is roughly 30 pounds, at least on its own, before you do anything. And then once you start doing certain things, it'll feel that much uh, more challenging. All right, so again, the goal for me with this video is to do squats, and specifically doing squats with in this video and for this exercise is to do it, and I'm using handles instead of a bar. With the bar that I have, it's so short I can do it. It's just annoying to do it with a bar that short in terms of doing squats. And feeling as if I don't have enough room, saying that one, I'm not thin, and with a person that's not thin, there's no reason to use certain equipment. So in terms of having the freedom to move without feeling restricted, I am using bands and using handles. All right, so with your bands again, so if you can see my hands, the bands are already stretched. So depending on what a person decides to do, will dictate how much resistance you feel, depending on what you're currently capable of. So, since the video is based on squats, what I do with again, it's up to you depending on which bands you're using and what you're capable of. So what I'm going to do is squat down, grab my bands, so that way it's less challenging for me to try to lift it and possibly hurt my back or anything. All right, and then stand straight up, feet flat on the floor. So now at 30 pounds, and I'm down here, I don't really feel it, which you shouldn't necessarily, depending on how tall you are. But then once you stand up, it's a whole different bit of craziness. So again, these bands are 30 pounds, and then the more you stretch them, the more you feel it. 2 more. Be careful when you put them down as well, because that can hurt also, depending on your experience and strength level. So even though this is 30 pounds on its own, until you start using it and stretching it, depending on how strong you are currently and how tall you are currently, depending on your age to where you might get taller. At 38, I'm not. You're going to feel it a certain amount. So if a person is 5'5", they won't feel this as much because they're so short. For me, almost being 5'9", I can feel it quite a bit, and I'm kind of strong. For a person that is 5'10" or taller, whether they're stronger than me or not, this is going to feel so much more challenging to them, just because of the fact that they're going to stretch it more due to them being taller. So I'm going to do one more set here, and I'm going to face this way. See if that makes a difference in terms of the video and how it looks to you. So again, depending on what you're doing, you know, if you're curling it, it's going to feel a certain way. And if you're shoulder pressing it, I'm not going to do that. It's going to feel a certain way because, again, now I'm stretching it more. And anytime you do anything overhead, you're going to feel it more. So then with this, you do the same thing you would do with a bar. It's just going to feel different. For you and certain people, you might say better. But again, for me, I enjoy the challenge of it being different, and it helping me in certain ways that I either needed to and or wanted to with the stuff that I'm doing. So this will be the last set for this in terms of talking about it and showing it to you. So again, to make sure it's not more challenging than it has to be, and not doing something that will hurt my back or my shoulder, any part of my shoulder or my neck, to not hurt at all. Squat first, pick up your band, put it over your shoulder, stand all the way up, so that's one. Okay, and then put it down. Again, just like you would with picking it up, put it down so you don't do anything to hurt your shoulder, your back, or anything else. Okay, and then again, that really depends on which band. At one point with the company I get my band from, this was the thickest one. Now, it's not the thickest one, so there's a possibility I could have done 10 reps with the band that is 40 pounds, but since my current goal is to do more reps, I didn't use the 40-pound band. Say hello to the kitty, but I hope she don't jump on me. To make sure I did the number of reps that I wanted to do, I used a 30-pound band based off me being 5'9" or close enough to it, filling in a certain amount. And depending on what kind of program you're on, you do a warm-up set to see how you feel, figure out which band you're going to use, depending on which brand of bands you use. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So it depends on which brand of bands that you use, which band that you choose with whatever brand you have and use, how tall you are to figure out which one you're going to warm up with, and then which one you're going to do your working sets with, how many reps you want to do, how much time you're going to take in between sets, and if I didn't say it already, how many sets you're going to do. So a certain number of questions you have to have, an abundance of questions you have to think about um, to ask yourself, if I was your trainer, I would do multiple things between asking you, um, what your goal is and, the experience you have with the bands. Make a suggestion on which band that you use to warm up with. Um, which band, after you do the warm up, which band you use to do your working sets, which is the 2 working sets I just did. And now that I have more of an idea of whether I can do a certain number of reps with a certain band, whenever I do this next, I will probably use a black band, which is 40 pounds. And again, that's going to feel probably a lot different because it's only 10 pounds more. But the more I stretch it, the more I'm going to feel it. So as a shoulder press, I would feel it so much more. But to make sure I don't feel it in my back, I don't do shoulder presses with this. If I get to the point where I can do it again at some point, because I've done it before. But I don't want to risk hurting my shoulder, my back, my elbow, and it's usually on my left side. I mentioned it. It's not necessarily better. It's just the fact that it's an opportunity to try something different depending on what you're used to. If you're just beginning, go for it. Just be careful with which band you choose and which exercise you're doing. Because again, if it's a shoulder press, that's a whole different bit of craziness because of how much you're stretching it, depending on your current height. As far as squats, similar because you go from all the way down here to all the way up here, again, depending on your height, to where by the time you stand up, this is supposedly 30 pounds, but by the time you stand up, depending on what your current strength is, it might feel like an additional 200 pounds, additional 300 pounds. And again, it's just a different mechanic in terms of what, how, and why. And depending on what you're doing, if you try something different to go from squatting on a bar and being stuck at a certain weight, do this for a certain period of time and then go back to the bar, and then you should feel a difference in terms of what and how you can do it, the mental and emotional confidence that you'll have after the fact compared to what you had before. And again, it depends on a person. For those who have met me at any point over the last 20 years, have caught on to certain things about me, I've caught on to certain things about myself, and people have had the time to catch on to this about me, is that I'm weird and borderline crazy, just in terms of there's certain things that certain people will think about doing and not do. So, and what I mean by that is, I'll get ready to do a certain exercise with a certain load on the bar, on the dumbbell, on the leg press, whatever it is. And other people might have thought about doing that, but didn't do it due to fear of getting hurt, fear of not being able to do it. There's a possibility I have a fear, something close enough to a fear, but it's more of a curiosity for me. So hopefully, depending on what you're doing, it becomes more of a curiosity on whether or not you can do the exercise. So as far as the bands are concerned, take into consideration which band you use. Warm up first, especially if you don't have much, if any, experience using certain bands, specifically bands like this. The bands that I've been using for at least 17 years are from Body Elastics. And obviously with me using those bands for all this time, almost 20 years, obviously I'm comfortable with them, I like them, and they work. Otherwise, I wouldn't use them because I don't use equipment, gyms, or whatever it is that I use. I don't do anything based off of popularity. So if I do whatever it is I'm doing, I have a current belief that it should work, will work. At this point, I know it does work because it's been almost 20 years. Be cautious on which band you use to warm up. That should give you an idea of whether or not you should try to move up, depending on how much you're trying to move up to. But moving up and using a certain band is different than moving up and using a certain dumbbell, using a certain bar, compared to using a certain band and then trying to jump to another band, depending on your current level of experience, how your body feels, how much sleep you got the day or the night before, how much nutrients your body has from the stuff that you had to eat and drink at some point before the workout, the mental and emotional confidence that you have, and then even if you're somewhat unsure, having a better idea of, I want to do this, let me try this first, and then, pick one of the bands and try it. And the one thing that I love so much about bands is that if you try to squat and you're not strong enough to squat this band, you'll find out immediately. So you'll get to the point to where you'll try to squat this band, and while you're down here, as you try to come up, just like you would with a bar, you'll notice you can't move. That don't mean there's something wrong with the band. That means you're not ready to squat that band. So I had it to where I believe when I was in my early 20s and I was using bands in college, and the old school people, the people that were at least 3 years older than me, if not a lot more than that, you're wasting time. Bands don't work. You should just use dumbbells, just use bars and regular squats, and that's a waste of time. But then for some reason, a certain period of time went by and I'm still using bands. When that was my preference to use just bands. And all of a sudden, certain people are just like, hey, can I try it? It's like, so you went from talking bad about it for who knows how long to all of a sudden you want to try it. They try it, and all of a sudden they can't bud, they can't move. At the time, it was a black band, whatever the resistance was at that time, because changes have been made in terms of the amount of resistance. Probably 19 pounds, but again, the more you stretch it, the more you feel it. So I think I was doing a chest press with it, and the person, was trying to chest press, I already had it to where I was standing further away from the base of where I had the band, and the person's trying to chest press it and couldn't budge. And he's like, why can't I do it? And I could have gave him a simple and respectful response, but since he pissed me off, I said, it's because you suck and don't know what the hell you're doing. I probably didn't say hell, but it's like, you suck and don't know what you're doing. And he was like, so how do you get better? It was like, one, with practice. Two, you might have to stand further back. Three, you might have to pick a different band. Gave him a different band, and he was able to do it. Now all of a sudden he has respect for the bands and what I told him. So, one, for certain people to a certain degree mind their own business. Two, to try certain things depending on what it is before you say something stupid, or actually, before you say something stupid. Well, I hope you don't say something stupid, especially if it's to someone like me who can hurt you for it, can and will hurt you for it. And then not only the fact that I can and probably will hurt you for it, just because it's different doesn't mean that it's wrong. Doesn't mean that this other thing is better. Certain people like me do stuff that they hope to work, do stuff that will likely work. And then again, with me going on 38 soon and doing this for almost 20 years, obviously, at least for me, I know it works. It has, it does, and will work. And depending on your current thing in terms of whether you have experience with bands or not, and how tall you are currently, how strong you are currently will dictate what and how you do certain things. So again, to make it to where this video isn't much longer than it is, if one, I only did squats. So if I want to do more stuff with bands, but I want to make sure people are actually interested. So if you see this and like it, please don't hesitate to press the like button, share it with people who might be interested in it for whatever the reason, whether it's, hearing what I have to say, if they used bands before and it didn't work out for whatever reason, being uncertain about how, what, when, So again, it's for me, it's not based on popularity. Again, I want to do more stuff with bands, but make sure you're actually interested in it, because I love it. I've been doing it for almost 20 years. So again, you'll help me and the channel if you press the like button. If you just happen to know of certain people who will be or might be interested in it, curious about it, please share it with a few people, if not multiple people. And then honestly, to help me a little bit more, if you reply with a respectful comment under the video, like, hey, I liked it, or hey, I'm wondering this, and depending on what the question is, what the comment is, and depending on what the question or comment or concern is, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Again, depending on what you say. If it's stupid, obviously I'm not going to. At least depending on what I consider to be stupid. So yeah, hopefully you like it at least a little bit. Press the like button. Hopefully share it. Hopefully subscribe, so that way you're become aware of whenever the next video is, what it is, when it is, and hopefully like that one too. So again, depending on how many of my videos you've seen up to this point, the focus is on strength in some way, shape, or form, to a certain degree balance, but definitely focused on strength. So hopefully there's no confusion there. Strength, to a certain degree, power as well. So again, if you're interested in that, go ahead and subscribe so you can see the next one, depending on how many you've seen up to this point. This is Marton, owner and trainer of Fuller Fitness. Take care.